all grandmothers have certain little nicknames that they are known by. Names like Grandma and Granny, Nana, Meemaw, Mama, so on and so forth. However, Nanny Doss, the lady you're looking at here, she holds none of those common grandmother names. Oh no. But she is known by several more very sinister nicknames. Some of those names being the Giggling Granny, the Lonely Hearts Killer, the Jolly Black Widow, and even Lady Bluebird. Now, if you may be wondering why Nanny is known by such outrageous names, just sit back and listen and let me tell you a short but very true story about Nanny Doss, a notorious female serial killer. Nanny is actually a nickname that she was given by her parents. Her actual name is Nancy Hazel. She was born in Anniston, Alabama on November the 4th of 1905. Nancy was one of 5 children, having 3 sisters and 1 brother. Her father was very strict as well as abusive and controlling with all of the children. They were made to work on the family farm daily instead of being able to attend school. Going to visit family and riding on a train when Nanny was 7 years old. The train was traveling at a high rate of speed when it came to a sudden halt. Nanny fell forward and hit her head. This head injury allegedly resulted in her having lifelong migraines as well as blackout spells and even occasional depression. And these are the very things that she would use later as the excuses for the horrific crimes that she went on to commit. As the children got older, their father became even more controlling, especially towards his girls. They were absolutely not allowed to get prettied up in any sort of way. They were forbid from even wearing makeup, wearing any clothes that were trendy whatsoever. They couldn't even wear clothes that were colorful or even pretty for that fact. They were absolutely not allowed to have a boyfriend either. So Nanny spent any and all of her free time that she had just engrossed in reading the newspapers. There was one certain section of the newspaper that she really obsessed over, and it was called the Lonely Hearts Club. In 1921, Nanny was 16 years old. She started working at a local sewing plant in Anniston, Alabama, and this is where she met her very first boyfriend, Charlie Braggs. Within 5 months of meeting him, they were married. Nanny moved in with Charlie and his mother, but Charlie's mother was very much like Nanny's father. She was very manipulating and controlling. But Nanny and Charlie started a family almost immediately after they got married. They quickly had 4 girls. They were like doorsteps. They had them back to back. There was Gertrude, who was born in 1922. And then Zelmer, she came in 1923. Melvina was born in 1924. And then later Florine came in 1926. After living a very routine life and raising all these children that just continued to come back to back, Nanny became depressed. She started drinking, and her occasional cigarette turned into a back-to-back chain-smoking habit. Charlie and Nanny were both seeing other people behind each other's back. Although Charlie was doing way more running around and cheating than Nanny was. In August of 1927, shortly after Nanny had fed all of her children breakfast, Zelmer mysteriously passed away. Her death was ruled food poisoning. But just a month after that, and under the exact same situation, after eating her breakfast on September the 25th, Gertrude also suddenly passed away. And again, her passing was ruled food poisoning. After the sudden and unexplained deaths of 2 of their children, Charlie took their oldest daughter, Melvina, and moved back in with his mother. He left Nanny with their newborn daughter, Florine. And finally, in 1928, Nanny and Charlie got a divorce. She took Malvina back from Charlie, and her and both of her daughters moved in with her parents. Nanny then went to work at a cotton gin in the same town that her parents resided in. I'm going to go ahead and say right now at this point in the story that Charlie Braggs would be the only husband of Nanny's that got away from her while still having his life. Charlie later admitted that he did leave Nanny out of absolute fear for his own life. Nanny turned back to her old faithful, the Lonely Hearts Club column in the local newspaper. And in 1929, one particular letter really sparked her interest. This was a man by the name of Frank Harrelson, and he was from Jacksonville, Florida. Without hesitation, Nanny responded to his ad. Soon, Frank was writing poems to Nanny and wooing her through these letters. They sent them back and forth, and Nanny even sent Frank a photo of herself and was writing him back love letters. They were very, very racy. But it wasn't long after these two started exchanging letters through the mail that they met, and they almost immediately got married. She and both of her daughters, Malvina and Florine, moved to Jacksonville, Florida to live with her brand new husband. But it didn't take long after saying "I do" that the wooing and the love poems that Frank had written her and wooed her with were nothing more than just a bait to hook her. Soon after the marriage, Frank's mask fell off. He was a raging alcoholic, and he had an explosive temper, and he was extremely abusive. But they never divorced. When he died, they had been married for 16 years. But a lot happened in those 16 years, a lot of terrible, nightmarish things. Nanny's daughters had grown up and had children of their own. Nanny was now a grandmother, but it wouldn't be long before tragedy struck with two of her grandchildren. Both of these grandchildren were from her oldest daughter, Malvina. In 1945, her oldest daughter, Malvina, gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. But soon after her birth, the newborn passed away. Malvina has always remained adamant that she saw her mother push a hat pin into her newborn daughter's ear, saying that she actually witnessed her mother take the hat pin out of her own hat, stick it into her newborn daughter's ear, and pierce her brain. Then it was only just a few months after the death of the newborn granddaughter that she was watching her 2-year-old grandson when he mysteriously stopped breathing. His death was ruled asphyxiation by unknown means. However, it is well believed that she smothered this child with a pillow because she quickly collected a $500 life insurance policy that she had taken out on him not long before he died in his sleep at her home under her care. After the deaths of the grandchildren, Nanny and Frank's marriage was crumbling. Frank's drinking and violence had become more frequent, while Nanny's deep thoughts was taking over her reality. Why could her life not be like the ones that she reads about in the romance novels? It just was not fair. The last straw in Nanny and Frank's marriage was one morning after he came in stumbling after staying out all night and drinking and just living it up with his friends that had just returned from the war. Frank raped Nanny. During the time that she was being attacked by her husband, she silently made a plan in her own mind, and Frank would never hurt her again. Nanny knew exactly where Frank kept his moonshine that he thought was hidden from her. She knew exactly where it was. So while he was sleeping, she got that mason jar of moonshine and she loaded it up with rat poisoning. And within a week of Frank thinking that he was being sneaky and slipping around drinking his secret stash of moonshine, he died on September the 15th of 1945. His death was ruled food poisoning or some other ailment. With Nanny now being a widow, her attentions turned back to the newspaper and, of course, to the Lonely Hearts Club section. Soon she connected with the man from North Carolina named Arlie Lanning. Arlie and Nanny only exchanged just a few letters back and forth before they met face to face, and within only 2 days of their face-to-face meeting, they got married. Nattie moved to North Carolina into her new husband's home with him. Arlie's family absolutely adored Nanny, thought she was perfect for him. They were so much in love and so happy together. His family just thought that Nanny was sent from the heavens above to Arlie. Nanny and Arlie had only been married for 2.5 years when Arlie became mysteriously almost deathly ill, and soon after this initial set-on of being sick, he passed away. His death was ruled a heart attack that was brought on by flu symptoms. But to Nanny's surprise, Arlie had a will. He had never really thought about his will since he had made it out years earlier. But when the will was read and his estate was left to his sister, this didn't really go over well with Nanny. But it didn't matter because, ironically, the home burnt down in the middle of the night before Arlie's sister was able to lay claim or take possession of the home. You see, Arlie's family loved Nanny, and they were so worried about her, having Arlie pass away so unexpectedly, as well as the home that she shared with him burns down shortly afterwards. So the family asked her to move in with their mother, which is Nanny's mother-in-law. They told her to do this until at least the insurance company had paid out to her the insurance money on the home that burnt, and she could set herself back up again. Of course, Nanny graciously accepted their offer, and she moved in with her late husband's mother. But wouldn't you know, tragedy struck again, and just around the same time that Nanny was able to collect the insurance money on the burned home, her mother-in-law passed away in her sleep. So with the insurance money in her hand from the home that had burnt, Nanny headed back to Alabama. Upon arrival, she learned that her sister, Debbie, was very sick and she was in the final stages of cancer. With Nanny needing a place to stay anyway, she offered out of the kindness of her heart to move in with her sister and take care of her. But you already know, Debbie passed away very soon after Nanny moved in. So it was either because the Lonely Hearts Club stopped being printed in the newspaper, or she had just decided to broaden her options. Either way, she joined a singles club, and it was called the Diamond Circle Club, and she connected very quickly with a man from Emporia, Kansas. His name was Richard Morton. Kansas didn't sound so bad to Nanny, as she was ready to leave Alabama again. It was 1952, and things were changing, and she was getting older, plus the fact that she did not like to stick around too long in the same area. Nanny and Richard met quickly after connecting, and of course, weeks afterwards, they also got married. Nanny moved to Kansas with her new husband. Nanny was so happy that Richard did not drink at all, but it was not long before she did realize that he was not faithful, and the affairs and the cheating started. Nanny's parents were also getting older, and not long after Nanny moved to Kansas, her father passed away, leaving her mother Hazel alone. And only a couple of weeks after her father passed away, she got word that her mother had fell and broken her hip, and she could not care for herself. Nanny had her mother brought to her in Richard's house in Kansas so she could take care of her. But exactly 3 days after her mother arrived at their home, she developed extreme stomach cramps, and she too passed away. While Nanny was trying to deal with the things with her mother and her sudden sickness and death, Richard was busy carrying on his affairs and cheating away. Nanny, by this time, was literally at the end of her rope with these men. So she took Richard's thermos of coffee that he always took to work with him, and she filled it with arsenic. Richard passed away in May, and by the very next month, in June of 1953, Nanny had already hit the personal ads again looking for love. This time, she met a man from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and his name was Samuel Doss, and she married him. Samuel was already in like a broken state when she met him. He was vulnerable, and this is because he had just recently lost his entire family, his wife and his children, in a horrific tornado that destroyed their home in Madison, Alabama. Not only was he a looker and a good catch, he was very good-hearted. He had no ex-wife or no children that she would have to meet or impress. And he was also a minister. So of course he's not going to drink. And he's not going to be cheating and committing adultery. He was not violent or abusive or anything like that. So she thought this was going to be, finally, the perfect husband and the perfect marriage. But after she moved in with him, she soon learned that with him being a minister, there was some cons that she had not considered while she was weighing the pros and the cons of her new husband. He did not allow a television in his home, and not only that, he also did not allow any magazines or books in his home unless they were Christian or educational materials. So Nanny could not have her romance novels that she loved to get lost in, and this did not go over well at all in her mind. So what did Nanny do? She left him when her arguments of having her romance novels just fell on his deaf ears. She just packed her bags up and she walked out. She was not gone very long at all, and she did go back soon after, but only after Samuel agreed to put her name on his banking account and for him to take out 2 separate life insurance policies on himself and name her as the sole beneficiary on both. Well, Samuel agreed to her conditions, done as she asked, and she went back. But wouldn't you know it, only a few weeks after she went back to Samuel on October the 5th of 1963, Samuel had to drive himself to the hospital. He was feeling very weak and sickly, and he thought he may be coming down with the flu, but in actuality, and unknown to him, his symptoms were actually reactions to the poison that Nanny had put into a prune cake that she had baked just for him. But she must not have put enough arsenic in it to do a fast kill, so he only became violently ill in the hospital for almost a month before being released. So with Samuel being released from the hospital and recovering from the failed attempt with the prune cake, Nanny was silently just boiling inside. She was upset that she was not already moving on somewhere else by this point. So on October the 12th, and Samuel seemingly bouncing back fine, her patience to move on had ran out. She loaded his coffee cup with arsenic, and Samuel died soon after having his morning coffee. But the thing with Samuel was a little bit different. He was a well-known minister in his community, and he was a well-respected friend to most everyone. It is not unusual that word would spread very fast among people in the community about Samuel's strange health issues, and even his marriage shortly started having issues after they had gotten married, and she even left him. He had changed his bank account, and that was also noticed fast by the people in town. And then he just gets deathly sick and has to drive himself to the hospital with flu-like symptoms when the flu was not even making its rounds yet. And within days of going back home to fight off the flu, he drops dead for no apparent reason. Well, the doctor that treated Samuel while he was in the hospital had his own suspicions that something was very, very off, because Nanny never really seemed sad or even depressed at all about her husband's fast declining health while he was in the hospital. She was actually always quite the opposite. She was always just smiling and giggling, which the doctor found to be quite odd, and something just was not setting right with him. So he took it upon himself to contact Nanny, and he asked her if she would agree and sign for her husband of less than 4 months to have an autopsy conducted on him. The doctor told Nanny that it was just so bizarre to him that such a healthy man come down with these flu-like symptoms. And then after he was admitted into the hospital, it seemed like he was getting better. He was dismissed from the hospital, and then suddenly he just falls out on the floor dead without having any sort of prior health issues or problems whatsoever. So the doctor went on to tell Nanny that performing an autopsy on Samuel would not only give her the answers to what actually happened to her husband, it could also help many other people in the future, and possibly could prevent whatever happened to Samuel ever happening to anyone else again. Well, Nanny actually had her mind somewhere else completely while the doctor was talking to her and trying to get her approval to perform the autopsy. Nanny was more concerned on getting with the insurance companies and the bank to be bothered with whatever the doctor was talking about. She didn't even really know what an autopsy was anyway. So just to keep in the good graces of the community, she of course fully agreed to having Samuel have this autopsy. So she signed the papers, shook the doctor's hand, thanked him for caring, wiped a little tear away, and headed straight to the bank. The autopsy was conducted almost as soon as Nanny signed the consent. During the autopsy, it was found that there was enough arsenic in Samuel's body to have immediately killed over a full-grown horse. The doctor immediately contacted the police, and Nanny was promptly arrested. Nanny ultimately confessed to the deaths of 4 of her 5 husbands. However, she absolutely denied ever being responsible for any of her other family members' deaths, including her 2 grandchildren. But all of these that Nanny denied killing, their bodies were exhumed, and upon autopsies of these bodies, they were all also riddled and full of arsenic. All of the deaths that were exhumed were absolutely caused by arsenic poisoning. In 1954, Nanny was charged and convicted of murder in the state of Oklahoma. Nanny claimed that the reason she'd done these things is because she had no control over her own actions due to the head injury that she received when she was 7 years old. So she was eventually charged for those murders as well. In Alabama, North Carolina, Kansas. However, she was never tried or convicted for those crimes, only charged. Had Nanny been sentenced to the electric chair, she would have been the first woman in Oklahoma to ever be put to death by the electric chair. And 2 years following her trial, a judge did declare that she was mentally insane. 10 years to the day that Nanny was incarcerated. On June the 2nd, 1965, she passed away at the age of 60 with leukemia. Nanny was named the Giggling Grandma because of her actions and demeanor during the trials and the interviews with the media. Because anytime at all that she was asked about or she was talking about the crimes that she committed and how and what she had done to cause their deaths, she would always giggle out loud while she was talking about her victims. And when detectives would ask her why she continued to kill her husbands, she said, and I quote, "I was looking for the perfect mate, the real romance in life," end quote. She maintained until she died that her search for the perfect love was always motivated by love and never by money. Nanny is suspected of murdering at least 12 people between the 1920s and 1954, the majority of these people being her own blood relatives. Her known victims were, in the year of 1927, on August the 30th, Selma Braggs, age 4, in Alabama, whom was her daughter, poisoned with arsenic. September the 25th, 1927, Gertrude Braggs, age 5, also from Alabama. This again was her daughter, poisoned by arsenic. In the year of 1945, the unknown date of Malvina's newborn daughter, Jacksonville, Florida. She was stabbed in the ear with a long hat pin, piercing her brain. July the 7th, 1945, Robert Lee Haynes, age 2, Jacksonville, Florida. This was her grandson. She smothered. September the 16th, 1945, Frank Harrelson, age 39, Jacksonville, Florida. This was her second husband, and again, he was poisoned by arsenic. In the year of 1950, June the 30th, Dovie Weaver, age 42, Gadsden, Alabama. This was her sister. September the 7th, 1950, Sarah Lanning, age 85, Lexington, North Carolina. This was her mother-in-law. Again, arsenic poisoning. The year 1952, February the 16th, Arlie Lanning, age 52, Lexington, North Carolina. This was her third husband, and again, arsenic poisoning. And then the year 1953, on January the 3rd, Louisa Hazel, age 74, Lexington, North Carolina. This was her mother. Again, arsenic poisoning. May the 19th, 1953, Richard Morton, age 64, Emporia, Kansas. This was her fourth husband, and again, arsenic poisoning. October the 12th, Samuel Doss, age 58, Sand Springs, Oklahoma. This was her fifth husband, and again, arsenic poisoning. Thank you all so much for listening, and we would truly appreciate a thumbs up or either a thumbs down if you feel so inclined. It really does help the channel. And until next time, this is Unjustified. Thank you so much for watching, and do not forget to subscribe, like, share, and leave us a comment below on your thoughts of this video. And until next time, this is Unjustified.